Welcome back to Fantasy Football RPG, your go-to source for all things fantasy football. Join us for expert analysis, top strategies, and the latest insights to help you dominate your league. Let's level up your game and dive into the nitty-gritty. Without further ado, let's get the action.
Welcome back to another episode of Fantasy Football RPG. We're going to cover your Week 8 storylines, news and notes, and just some rumors that David has been keeping his ear to the floor on. David, how are you tonight?
Doing great, Mike. Thanks for having me back. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I hope this is something that we continue to do. Well, you can keep coming back as long as I don't annoy you. So we'll see how long that lasts. Listen, let's just jump right into it. Give the people what they're looking for. So recently, Davante Adams was traded to the Jets. Amari Cooper was traded to the Bills. DeAndre Hopkins was traded to the Chiefs. Start, bench, cut those three players.
So I'm interested in all of them. I think their current homes are better than their previous ones in each case. But if I had to go for my favorite, I'd probably say it's Amari Cooper to the Bills. Josh Allen is, to me, the best quarterback in the NFL this year. Patrick Mahomes isn't playing up to his usual standard. Lamar Jackson's in that conversation too, but for me, it's Allen. And now there's no real target competition there. In walks Amari Cooper, a guy who's been doing it like seemingly forever because he joined the NFL at the age of 7 years old. Yeah. But here he comes. There's no target competition. We've already seen the connection in action a little bit. I'm not really worried about Keon Coleman suddenly coming alive and stealing targets.
No.
Shakir's a good player, but it's a very different role. They can both coexist in this offense, so he's definitely my start. My bench is probably Davante Adams. The Aaron Rodgers connection, obviously, they go way back. Rodgers isn't the player he was now. I think it's safe to say that he's never getting that pre-Achilles form all the way back, but I think he will steadily improve as the year goes on. And if there's one thing we know about Rodgers, it's that being his best friend means you will have some sort of fantasy relevance.
Yeah. I wish I could completely agree with you, but his real best friend, Alan Lazard, plays on the team. So I'm also going to keep Cooper. I think the Josh Allen love is there. He was getting targets on big plays and deep balls, and he got a catchable pass, and it seemed like it blew his mind. So I think Cooper is the best option there, but I'm going to go with DeAndre Hopkins as the bench option. Andy Reid came out today and said that he looks for DeAndre Hopkins to win in the same areas of the field that Juju Smith-Schuster won. Juju Smith-Schuster is not a good football player at this point in his career. If he was getting the fantasy relevance that he was looking at, now you have an opportunity to see DeAndre Hopkins really explode onto the scene. I don't think he's going to have the same yard after the catch capability as those players like Rashee Rice and Juju to some extent, but I think he's going to catch everything that's in his radius. And if you're giving me 9 or 10 targets from Patrick Mahomes, give me 9 or 10 targets from Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah. My biggest worry with Hopkins is I'm not sure how much he has left. Now, all of those guys are on the older side. They're all much closer to the end than the beginning. But Hopkins himself, it's been inconsistent in Tennessee, and you can throw a lot of that on Will Levis. I get it, but look who Davante Adams was catching passes from. Those weren't good quarterbacks, and when he was playing, he was still consistent with it. And the way Hopkins wins football games is by being bigger, stronger than everyone else, not necessarily faster. So I'm worried about guys with that type of play style. Once you lose a little bit of that muscle that made you just too strong for a cornerback to match with, you really need to have a plan B. Hopkins, I think, is still a good football player, but his style of play, where it's always kind of just been being bigger than everyone rather than just learning how to get open against different coverages, that worries me that maybe it won't translate as well. And he'll his slow start wasn't all just leave us.
Yeah, I think that's a fair plan. I think the backup plan for DeAndre Hopkins is just that his contested catch ability is out of this world. So there's a clip that's floating around Twitter, Instagram, whatever your favorite social media is, where Hopkins had a 10-step release on a slant. He was not open. In no world was he open. Still caught the ball for 12 yards, so we'll take it. Bucs injuries, Evans with a gruesome hamstring injury. When they went down, there were words that it could be a cramp. There were words that it could be a tear. It is just a hamstring strain. And Godwin is gone for the year just after getting back from his ACL tear. Now dislocated ankle. You put this in here. Do you care about McMillan? I think that Michael Penix elevated the pass catchers at Washington, and it wasn't the other way around. I think that he is a fine wide receiver 3 in an offense. I don't think that he is a usable fantasy asset unless Baker decides to just sling it to him 100 times. The talent, in my opinion, I think there's other people that are all over him. I just don't think that he's a good football player. So it's not just a wide receiver handcuff. This is a hit to the offense as a whole.
Yeah, it definitely is. And the main reason I put McMillan on here is because there's reports out of just about everywhere that Tampa Bay isn't going to look for a receiver. They're supposedly not in on Cup, and who knows, maybe this is all just a smoke screen to try to like lower the price for the guys out there. But if these reports are true, McMillan, one way or another, is going to see a lot of targets. Now, personally, I don't think he's particularly good at anything. I think he's one of those classic jack of all trades, master of none that's like, going to bounce around the league for a little bit, but never do much of anything. But as the old saying goes, someone has to catch the ball. Baker's been throwing it really well this year. Obviously, having guys like Godwin and Evans helps the production, but he's been playing well in a vacuum. So if I'm in a redraft league, a deep one, and I desperately need someone at wide receiver, yeah, I'll bring him in. And hey, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this guy can play at least for short stretches at a time. But I'm not looking to give up anything for him in Dynasty.
Completely fair. If I may throw out an option. So Sterling Shepard, I know he's old. I know that he's, supposedly washed. But we have seen him have strings of utility in the past. And when Godwin went down, he was in the slot for 40% of his snaps. He was taking a little bit more of that role. Yes, it didn't look great, but if somebody's going to move into that Chris Godwin role, I think Sterling Shepard is the steady veteran that maybe a competing team's more willing to work with. So maybe it turns into something.
Yeah. I mean, that would have to be a case-by-case thing for like what type of team do I have. If I'm playing one of those leagues where there's like 5-6 flex spots and 7 points makes a genuine difference, I'm targeting Shepard. But if I'm playing in a bit more of a narrow league, like a 10-team or something where there's only 1 or 2 flex spots, I'm probably looking for McMillan because Shepard, you know what he is at this point. McMillan, he's a rookie. You don't know what there is. There's the college tape, which we think, says he's nothing special, but scouting is a very inexact science. Sometimes all a guy needs is an opportunity to prove everyone wrong. And that is in the realm of outcomes for McMillan. I don't think it's particularly likely, but I'm always willing to be wrong. That's one of the most important things you can do is just accept you don't know everything.
Yep. As soon as I see him pop, I will eat some crow and move on. But speaking of eating crow and moving on, Alvin Kamara is extended at 29 years old. The New Orleans Saints are now $80 million over the cap in 2025. Kendre Miller, former day 2 pick, no path to the field. Is there a chance that a trade could happen here?
I mean, at this point, I think New Orleans just needs to cut their losses. They took Kendre Miller. Alvin Kamara was, getting older, in 2023. Started slowing down, was taking a much bigger workload than he had during the Ingram days. So you kind of thought, hey, maybe the writing's on the wall. Maybe this Miller guy, who I thought was a bit of a reach in the third. I had him more as a 4th round guy. But hey, maybe this can, this kid can take the Kamara role moving forward. He absolutely can't. Dennis Allen just straight up hates the dude. There's no way around it. And now that Kamara is locked up for 2 years on money that they simply can't afford to move, he could fall off a cliff tomorrow, and he's on this team no matter what. So if I'm the Saints, I'm saying, hey, this is probably a lost year. We're 2-5. Injuries have ravaged us. Let's get a draft pick, even if it's only a 6th or 7th rounder. Anything helps to build this thing up from the ground again.
Yeah, I was going to ask, what is the best thing that they could get? I think a late day 3 pick at most. This is a young player who hasn't shown much that's getting day 2 money. Fantasy football, we would love for him to get traded. Go to Dallas, please. Go to the Chargers and be a thorn in J.K. Dobbins' side. There are places that he can go that he would be go to Las Vegas, which is just a disaster in the backfield. Alexander Mattison exists again. There are places that we would love to see him. I don't think that it's likely given how much the league doesn't like running backs and how much he's just kind of stuck there.
Yeah. Now, I do have one question for you. Is there a better player in football than Alexander Mattison when the lights are off?
Yep. I think I put that in my last waiver wire article. I was like, hey, is there a better player than Alexander Mattison when we have no expectations for him? traded a conditional third for him in a dynasty. It's very funny rules. So we were able to say, like, if he scores a touchdown, I will keep him. If he doesn't score a touchdown, you take him back and give me a fourth. Funny rules, but he ended up not scoring that week. So now he's off of my roster. And then the next 3 weeks, he was like a top 24 running back every week.
Yeah, I'm in. I think it's the league I'm in with you. It's like a 24-team league.
Yep.
It's a disaster. I inherited a mess of a team.
Yep.
Alexander Madison is my RB1, and somehow that's a good thing.
It's working out. All right, let's talk about the really exciting thing. Some possible names on the trade block. Cooper Kupp, which would be shocking. When the Rams were talking about their organization a couple of years ago, they said there were a couple of pillars of the team. We're talking about Sean McVay. We're talking about Matt Stafford. We're talking about Aaron Donald. The last one was Cooper Kupp. Like, those are the players that they want to build their organization around. Aaron Donald retires. The team's getting a little behind in the standings. They're playing right now. So if they won and I look like an idiot, whatever, like, they may be looking to a rebuild. And I think the smoke is real. Cooper Kupp should be available for trade. Do you think they will trade him? And if they do, where do you think he goes?
I think a lot depends on what happens during Thursday Night Football, which we're recording this right now just before kickoff. So by the time you're listening to it, you know what happens. But if the Rams lose this, I probably think Kupp's on the trade deadline. I think a healthy version of the Los Angeles Rams are a good team, but they've just been so injured. If they lose today, it's too late to dig themselves out of it. Yep. And, you got Puka coming back, so you might as well, sell high on Kupp, get what you can. He hasn't really stayed consistently healthy since 2021. So if I'm the Rams and it's clearly over, I'm selling.
Okay. Couple of landing spots that I like off the top of the head. I know we said Tampa Bay isn't in the market for a receiver. That's exactly what I would say if I was trying to trade for a receiver. I think that makes a ton of sense. You know who can play the Cooper Kupp role, which is coming into the Tampa Bay offense? Maybe this guy named Cooper Kupp. So he's 1-for-1 replacement for Chris Godwin. I think it makes a ton of sense. The Pittsburgh Steelers desperately need a wide receiver too. Roman Wilson, another injury, so we're probably not even seeing him in 2024. It's a redshirt year. Those are my two favorite landing spots. Are there any other ones that make sense to you?
Yeah, those two are the ones that definitely jump out at you just because it's too obvious to not happen, at least one of them.
Yep.
But if any coach other than Jim Harbaugh was running the Chargers, I'd say the Chargers. But Harbaugh just does not believe in the forward pass. I really hope Arizona's game was a wake-up call that, like, hey, this is the NFL. Justin Herbert's phenomenal, but you need someone better than Jalen Reagor to lead this attack. Like, Herbert had a phenomenal game, and they couldn't get into the end zone just because everyone there is so awful. Now, I know the young guys are battling injuries. In theory, once McConkey and Quentin Johnston get healthy again, this passing attack will have something to work with. But even when they're back, you want a more experienced veteran, someone that can lead the team down the stretch. That's what Kupp is, and I think he's perfect for Harbaugh's scheme. Harbaugh's more preference for kind of a quick game, a quick hitter thing. Kupp would be great with that.
Yeah. In breaking routes, Cooper Kupp from Justin Herbert sounds like a fantasy or a Madden player's dream. So those are a couple of names to watch. Deontay Johnson, healthy scratch, but wasn't at practice. So where do you think he goes? Do you think he's on the block?
So Deontay Johnson's one of those. If you've been watching the Panthers practice reports, there's been a lot of did not participates. Are the Panthers just keeping him out for a trade? Is he actually hurt? Is it a bit of both? Like, hard to really say with any certainty what's going on there. But assuming health isn't an issue, frankly, I don't see why Carolina would hold on to him. If they were going to extend him, they probably would have done it by now. This is a lost year. So why are you keeping a guy that, based on the market, you could probably get a third-round pick for?
Yeah. A couple of spots that come to mind for me, and I know one of these is going to be completely out of left field. So Chargers make sense. Bucks make sense. I want to throw out the San Francisco 49ers.
I love that.
Brandon Ayuk's out. You just signed him to a big extension, so you need him in the future. But you know who has a really good skill set that compares to Brandon Ayuk's? Deontay Johnson. You can slide him right in, take a week, maybe two, see what Ricky Pearsall gives you, see if Juwan Jennings can come back healthy. And if they can't, go get Deontay Johnson and continue to make a run at a title. You're at a window right now with Brock Purdy on the smallest quarterback contract possible. Go win a title.
Yeah, I love the fit of the 49ers there. I'll throw out the Washington Commanders. We spoke about this in our last episode that I was on, I don't think the Commanders really need a great wide receiver because Jaden Daniels is playing so well. Jaden Daniels isn't there anymore, at least, or he might not be. It looks like it's Mariota time for at least a little while.
Yep.
So, get a guy that can keep you afloat. Mariota played really well against an awful Panthers defense. Maybe Cliff Kingsbury really is that good, or maybe real defenses can slow Mariota down. Either way, get Deontay Johnson, because when Jaden Daniels comes back, he probably will, need a few weeks to really get up to speed. Why not get him a wide receiver that can help him make that transition just a little easier?
Completely fair. Next up, we have old man Adam Thielen. I think there's really only a couple of teams that make sense. Like maybe the Steelers, if they think that he's the kind of guy that could fit in there. I think the Ravens, depending on the severity of what Zay Flowers is dealing with, makes a little bit of sense. And then all of the teams we've listed before, if they want to get a cheaper option, Adam Thielen is certainly available because he is not on the timeline of the Carolina Panthers, who are currently in line to compete. Let me check my calendar. 2040? 2040.
I think that's a little generous, but yeah, it's going to be a while for Carolina. Yeah. But yeah, Thielen's on there. The Ravens were going to be my pick because he's one of those guys that a contender could use him, but no one's going to go really out of their way for him. He's a perfect fit for a team that already has a good offense and just needs a complementary player or two. That's what Thielen is at this stage in his career. And, Kansas City already got their guy. Buffalo already got their guy. The Jets already got their guy. So who's really left on the schedule that doesn't have a glaring need at wide receiver? The Ravens.
Makes sense. Last but not least, and then we'll wrap it up, Khalil Herbert. So Ian Rappaport says there's some trade buzz going around there. Virginia Tech bias, I think that he's a good football player. Virginia Tech bias off. I think he's a solid replacement level back. You know who really needs a solid replacement level back? The Dallas freaking Cowboys. So I think that would make the most sense. Are there any other teams that make sense to you?
Yeah, Cowboys are the runaway favorite. Zeke has nothing left. It is just so over. And Rico Dowdle, he's doing a fine job, but he's also Rico Dowdle, so who cares? You got to get someone else in the backfield there. I know Jerry Jones isn't going to really go nuts on the trade deadline. He's basically admitted it. But if you can't afford Khalil Herbert, sell the team, man.
Oh, man. A 6th-round pick in 2028. Go get Khalil Herbert.
Yep.
But are there any other teams that make sense to you? I mean, nobody's really dealing with tough running back injuries, which is weird. Like there's wide receiver injuries all over the place. Running back injuries, they're perfect.
Yeah, wild season. But I'd throw the Chargers out there again too, just because Dobbins, I don't know how he's doing this. Like every previous case in the world says this guy should have been done after his Achilles injury. He's fantastic. But you know who isn't fantastic? Gus Edwards. He's on the IR now, but he was playing some terrible football even when he was healthy. If I'm Los Angeles, I love to run the ball. Greg Roman's my offensive coordinator who can't draw up a passing scheme to save his life, but his run blocking ideas are just beautiful. Put Khalil Herbert in there, have him complement Dobbins. You've got a great 1-2 punch for an offense that, if it had its way, would not throw the ball.
Really agree. Another name that I might throw out there, the Minnesota Vikings. Like Aaron Jones is great, a little bit old. I know they have Ty Chandler and they just traded for Cam Akers, but maybe they get him in the building. They realize what they realized 2 years ago or last year and decide to cut him again. Go get somebody that's actually healthy and good at football, which would make a lot of sense for them.
Yeah. But I'd have a tough time seeing the Bears trading Herbert in the division when that division's just so competitive.
Completely fair. But all right. Thank you, everybody, for listening. This has been a quick hit Week 8 storylines for fantasy football. David, you want to say anything?
Nothing. Last time I said to set your Thursday night football lineup, not realizing that this comes out on Friday. So set your Sunday lineups.
Be sure to set your Sunday lineups. Take those Monday night football players and put them, in the closet. Have a good night.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Fantasy Football RPG Podcast. You can find us on Twitter at FFRPGPod and at FFMikeCash with a K. Don't let the goblins get you. We'll see you next week.